So, for the longest time, I've been using the same old perks and the same old specialization within Generation 0, and up until the latest release of the Showdown update, I never really looked at changing things. However, now with every skill being available to us, as long as our character has a high enough level, it got me thinking, what really is the best specialization in Generation 0? So, that's exactly what we'll be looking into in today's video. But before we do, don't forget to comment your favorite skill specialization down below, and let's get into this. So there are 8 specializations in game and only one can be active, so you will have to choose carefully which one you want to use. And you know, maybe I can help in that department. So here's a quick little rundown of what each of them do. So Marksman completely eliminates weapon sway while using any weapon. Vanguard increases your damage resistance by 25%. Commander deploys field radios and can be used an additional 3 times for a total of 6 uses. Medic, any player you revive including yourself returns to the game with 100 health. Survivor, you may revive yourself once per combat encounter with the use of an adrenaline shot. Commando, the first damage dealt on any unaware enemy is increased by 15%. Hacker, any remote hacking will cause enemies to attack other enemies. And lastly, Engineer, the player may scavenge undamaged tick pods from enemies to use them to deploy ticks that attack enemies. Now, I can already make this list much shorter by quickly eliminating Engineer, Hacker, Commander, and Medic. These specializations aren't really necessary and don't really offer the player any significant benefits, as they're already equipment and things in game that does all of what these specialization perks offer, that being heals after revive, remote controlled ticks or companions that target enemies, hacking darts, and let's face it, just use 2 field radios instead of 1, so we're already down to 4. However, this is where it gets a little bit trickier now to narrow down. So we're left with Marksman, Vanguard, Survivor, and Commando. Now, all of these have their uses, but I feel 2 of them are a little bit weaker than others. So first off, Marksman. It eliminates weapon sway from all weapons, but to get down to that specialization, you already need to have boosted accuracy, weapon sway, lowered recoil. So compare this to the other 3, I think it's safe to say that Marksman can be crossed off our list. Next up, we have Commando. Now, usually I would have crossed this off the list with the first 4. However, I noticed a lot of people within Generation 0, like our community, like to play stealth and to play the game like it's Red Dawn or something with like that kind of mindset. So keeping this in mind, the Commando Specialist perk increases the first damage dealt to an unaware machine by 15%. Now, this got me thinking. If you were to pair this up with the enemy marking and designated target skills, you gain an additional 10% damage for damage dealt by spotting targets. So if you pair all these together, you stealth players will get an additional 25% damage to your first shot. So if you were to use something like, I don't know, like the experimental Mauser, for instance, spot the target, charge that sucker up to perfection, and let her rip on some poor unaware tank, you're gonna probably be dealing some insane damage from just that first shot. Now, depending on what difficulty you're playing on and the class of machine you're firing at, the potential for a one-shot tank or harvester takedown is highly likely. And if it's not a one-shot, and you can probably bet it'll be close to dead. So if you guys are smart with your loadout and your skills, the Commando Specialization could be game changer for you stealth players, but I will say for like 90% of the rest of the players, this isn't going to be for you. So yeah, Commando is a pretty decent option. However, I do believe it is limited to those stealth plays, because as soon as you shoot that first shot, the specialization then becomes useless until the tank is made unaware again, which does take some time, and this just really isn't an option for most players. So with that in mind, I think we're down to our final 2 contenders, and let me tell you, these 2 have made my life really hard while trying to make this video. They're both insanely useful, and I'm pretty sure I know which one I will like crown the best specialization in Generation 0, but let's quickly take a look at both of them. So, Survivor is a fairly straightforward perk. The first time you go down in an engagement or in combat, as the game calls it, you are gifted a free adrenaline shot to, well, you know, get yourself back in the fight. which honestly comes in handy for someone like myself with my playstyle who doesn't really waste resources or carry adrenaline shots of his own. I just die and respawn like a Chad. I'm not a Chad, I'm just a tired ass, but let's just go with Chad. Now, this perk is great and is very straightforward, and yeah, I have noticed though it does have a bit of a drawback. So in some situations, let's just say you get attacked outside of your safe house on the way to go do something and you go down. You quickly use Survivor to pick yourself back up, only to get romper stomped again by machines, and you decide to then spawn back at that base close by. This is where things get silly, because for some reason the machines somehow spot you and you are automatically in combat, meaning you never get that extra life if you spawn in close by where you died. Oh, Kilroy, you freaking idiot! I didn't. Yeah, that's on me. Yeah, see what I mean as well. That proves it perfectly. So I did a video recently talking about like the specialization perks, and the main issue with Survivor is that. So right then and there, I was new to combat, so I should have had an extra life. But because I spawned in close with a field radio, they never lose. They never lose combat. They can always, they're like in a constant state of spotting, if that makes sense. So you will lose the perk. So if you spawn in too close, especially your Survivor specialization becomes null and void. Holy crap, I'm pretty sure it's just a glitch within the game, or maybe it's just for me, and I hope it is just for me because I tell you it's annoying as. So test it out, but for me it was kind of what made me switch to my current specialization, but we'll get to that shortly. Now field radios have the same issue, so if you do go down near a field radio and spawn back in on it, don't expect to get your free adrenaline shot, as the machines are still spotting you for some reason, even though you're dead. So sorry to burst your bubble on this otherwise goated perk, because yeah, it's a bit of a letdown, and I maybe hope they fix it one day, but with the game pretty much ending, I severely doubt it. Lastly, we have Vanguard. Again, another very simple and straightforward specialization, so it essentially gives you a 25% damage reduction across the board. Whatever form of damage you can take in game, you are now 25% more resistant to it, which just honestly blows my freaking mind that I wasted so many years using silly marksman. The sheer magnitude of how godly this specialization is blows my mind. You compare this with any upgraded clothing type to become up to 65% resistance to one specific form of damage. So for instance, the two main forms of damage you will ever take in Generation 0 are ballistic, so from bullets, and explosive damage. But I'm gonna say it's probably like 75% leaning towards ballistics, let's face it. Yeah, so with that in mind, I could pair this up with my fully upgraded bullet resistant clothing, and I will become 65% resistant to machines' bullets, or vice versa with explosive damage if that's what you really want. But let's just let that sink in for a second. So 65% damage resistance. So you can survive longer and use less medkits. Hell, pair this up with the heal amount perk and you'll now even use less medkits, because a single standard medkit will restore 95% of your health. Like, Vanguard is just ridiculous. I can't even get this out of my mind. So like, just think of it from this perspective. A bullet from a tank is now doing 35% of its original damage. That's redunculous. So if something was to one tap you before, you still come out of it with 35 HP. Like, I can't. I wasted so many years using marksman thinking that was actually good. And you know what the weird thing is? I actually never checked any of the other specializations for years. I literally just used marksman, and I regret everything. So with all that out of the way, I think it's time to finally crown a king. And let's face it, the winner is obviously Vanguard. 25% damage reduction across the board is just too darn OP not to take into battle with you. Don't get me wrong, there are a few of you out there that we should probably use the commando like we said earlier on in the video, but for 90% of players, I would wholeheartedly recommend Vanguard over any of the other 8 specializations in game. But what do you guys think? What would you guys rate as the top specialization within Generation 0? Let me know down below in the comments. And honestly, because I'm kind of curious what you guys rate as the top one. So yeah, let me know down below. And be sure to smash that like and subscribe button while you guys are down there. And if you have any other future video guides, like, you know what I mean, suggestions for the channel or a game we should check out, yeah, be sure to let me know that down below in the comments also. But enough for me for one day. Until next time, everyone, happy hunting.